Welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Playing the Palace.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So many people, by the way, recommended your book to me that like I hope you know that there's all sorts of buzz going around this book. Everyone's like, "Have you read it yet? Have you read it yet?" So, anyway, just as
Oh,
an
I'm so
store that
glad.
away.
Oh, no, no, I'm especially glad I'm here today.
And I see why, because it's so great, it's so fun, it's so immersive. The main character is hilarious, and I like love him so much.
Oh,
It's
oh,
great to
thank you.
find
I'm so
like
glad.
such a like sort of self-deprecating the he's so down on himself. I'm blanking on his name. What is his name?
Carter.
Carter is so down on himself, and he's like always just feeling like the worst, like what is anyone doing with me, or I'm gonna fail this, and it's just so great to see him like triumph. And I don't know, it's just amazing, like the underdog story, if you will, and with a sense of humor. It was just great. I loved it. Anyway.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That makes me very happy.
So, why don't you tell listeners a little about what the book's about and how you came up with the story idea, which is
Oh,
also
well, I wanted, after everything we've all been through for the past year and the past many years before that, I wanted a complete all out romantic comedy. The most giddy, delicious escape. And I've been thinking for actually quite some time about a royal romance. I'd had the title maybe 20 years ago, Playing the Palace, and I wasn't sure where this story should land until I came up with Carter Ogden, who is a very lonely New York event planner with roommates. He's been dumped time and again. He just is at that as low as you can get. And then one day, as can only happen in Manhattan, he manages to meet Prince Edgar, the Crown Prince of England. And they fall hopelessly and passionately in love against, some of the largest imaginable obstacles, which is what I loved writing. So I think the core of the book is pretty much the moment when Carter decides he's going to take the Crown Prince of England to Piscataway, New Jersey as his plus one at his sister's wedding. Because I'm a Jewish guy from New Jersey, and I thought, okay, what would that be like? So it's just, I hope, a real celebration of romance and love and everything we're sort of yearning for in while beneath our masks.
I was surprised, by the way, at how cool his sister Abby was with having the crown prince sort of be in the audience, if you will, for her wedding unexpectedly, right? Because he hadn't told her, and that she was like, "This is awesome." Or I mean, anyway, she just loved it. It was great.
Yes, she used much more foul language than you
Yeah,
just
I
did,
was
which is,
debating
I
if I should
thank you
say
for,
that or
for
not.
tidying that up.
Yeah, I tidied
But
that up.
no, I love Abby too, because she's both a surgeon and someone who speaks her mind at every possible opportunity. And I just always admire people with that kind of exuberant confidence. People who are very happy to tell you what to live, who to marry, and what to wear. She is just so protective and supportive of her brother, and I think as you in the book, you find out why they bonded so deeply.
It's great. And yet there's still like there's so much heart too. It's not a frivolous read. Like you get into some real stuff, you know? Like here's this one paragraph I really liked that Carter said. He said, "What I needed well, this actually I'll read the previous line too because it's hilarious. I briefly considered tutoring people in poverty-stricken countries on creating Wonder Woman themed bat mitzvah centerpieces as a form of associate event Architects Without Borders." Oh my gosh. And then you said, "What I needed was something I'd never confided to anyone, not even my dearest friends and family members, because it was such an impossible and yearned for wish, something that I wanted so badly. It made me believe I had a soul. I wanted this one thing with such certainty that I knew it was more than a journal entry doodle or a childhood fantasy, which I needed to outgrow. It was who I was." Dot, dot,
Oh
dot.
yeah, no, I'm so glad you picked that because yeah, Carter is somebody who has so many secret dreams and that he thinks he's just reached that point in his life. He's about to turn 30 where he thinks maybe this is all out of reach. And suddenly there are possibilities, which can be quite terrifying. And I think Carter backs away quite a bit. And Prince Edgar, wonderfully, they sort of draw each other out and they make each other's futures become possible. And so, yeah, I wanted it to have some real underpinnings. Also, it's a story about people a very different social status. You know, that there couldn't be a larger gap between these two guys. And you know, in many ways, it also made me think about Meghan and Harry. You know, the idea of such an unlikely romance and how sometimes those are the very best, and those are the ones that I think the rest of the world tends to invest in because they could see themselves. Oh my God, there is the slightest dreamy possibility that that could happen to me.
Well, it's true. I mean, I feel like especially with the royals, like everybody wonders because it's of course it's like an impossible dream. How could you like what is it like for them to live and how what if like they'll have to get married? Like I remember this when Prince William's oldest son was born and it was like right when my third child was born and I was like maybe they'll meet and fall in love. Who knows? Like
Of course.
What if? Why not her?
Yeah. And you should keep thinking that way.
You never know.
Exactly. Keep holding
Although
up
I
the
don't
cover
know
of People magazine
I
to
don't know that
your
I would
children.
wish that on my daughter. I don't know. I don't know if it's something anymore to really aspire to. I mean, I grew up with like the Princess Diana giant coffee table books that I would like read every night before bed, and that whole, that whole time of really idolizing the palace life. Whereas now I feel like we've all seen the underbelly, if you will.
Oh my God, yes.
But back in the day, it was quite different. So, I don't know. I won't push my daughter too hard.
No, although I think you make a good point because also Princess Diana was one of the first royals, I think, especially in our lifetimes, who used her celebrity and her influence to do an awful lot of good in the world. And I
Yes,
think that's something that Carter and Prince Edgar share, that sense of no, it's no longer enough to just be rich and royal. You
right.
know, how can you turn that into a force for good? And I remember when Princess Diana, you know, visited AIDS patients, when she
Yep.
made a point of showing up. And I think Meghan and Harry seem to be following in that tradition. So it's impressive because you think, yeah, that's a prince and princess we could believe in.
Yes. Um, and I love, by the way, that at their first date, Carter and Prince Edgar, and you were like, it's so funny when you were like, when he said like you can call me Ed or Eddie or something like that, and you were like, no, 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 like, he's not an Ed, he's not an Eddie. But that they sat down to this super formal meal at whatever fine dining, super posh private room, whatever, and Carter's like, let's go to IHOP. I feel like you need to do some massive collaboration with that chain. Like, have you talked to them about doing
I'm
that?
I am waiting because I happen to be an enormous IHOP fan. Because when I was growing up in Jersey, anytime my family went to IHOP, it was a major occasion. It was a big treat. And one of the things that bonded my longtime partner and I is that we visit IHOPs all across the country. Although I have always been a little confused, even though it stands for International House of Pancakes, I haven't come across any in other countries. So
No.
there's a goal. But yeah, no, that is my dream for IHOP to maybe name a Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity special after me. You know, that was the first place we went, you know, when the lockdown was slightly lifting. And IHOP was very good about social distancing and wiping everything down with limited menu. But I thought, okay, IHOP is here for us.
That's so funny. Yes, there was one when I was in graduate school. There was an IHOP nearby, and that's sort of where I got to know my ex-husband. And we would like go to IHOP all the time, and it was open all. I don't know. It was just great. I love IHOPs. I love pancakes. Favorite food, by the way. So
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah,
No, IHOP in Carvel, actually, which
yes,
I feel like I'm proving I'm from New Jersey.
yes.
But yeah, no, IHOP, interestingly, is a destination for families and often for criminals because it's open late. So you can meet all sorts of people at an IHOP.
Yes, but very good, and the sticky syrup, and, like, you just got it all. I mean, you just, like, nailed it, and yes, Carvel as well. We have
Yeah,
fudgy at all of our birthdays. Fudgy the Whale, a staple. If
for
so
Father's
you
Day.
yes, Father's I should yeah. Now you don't even have to order anything, you just, like, go in. Anyway, So I know you have a big background in screenwriting, and I loved In and Out, by the way. I watched
Oh,
that right
thank
when
you.
it came out and everything. And this, of course, feels very visual. It feels to me a lot like Notting Hill, where you have like all this cast of characters, and they all kind of band together, and there's this dramatic ending. And I don't know, it just kind of reminded me of that in particular. What's it like writing fiction as a novel as opposed to screenwriting? And do you see this one ending up on the screen as well?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Notting Hill because that was the kind of movie I wanted to reflect in this novel. That it was also about someone because it's a regular guy, a guy who runs a bookshop who falls in love with one of the world's biggest movie stars. And I love the idea of a romance in that kind of spotlight. That's different from Equals, or it entails all sorts of challenges that most of us don't have to deal with. So, and as far I love screenwriting, but it's very different discipline. And I've learned through trial and error to usually let the material decide where it wants to land. So I'd be delighted to have Playing the Palace become a movie, but I think it was when I heard it in Carter's voice, which is something that can only really exist on the page. That was when it all came together for me. So that it certainly has a visual element, especially anytime you're entering Buckingham Palace, suddenly
Yes.
that's what we're looking at. So it's but yeah, I've always enjoyed sort of leapfrogging between the stage, movies. Look at your beautiful dog.
Yeah, sorry about she's my podcast companion. She's always
Oh,
here.
that's so great. Um, but yeah, so that screenwriting certainly has informed my work and helped me with dialogue, especially because it makes you edit, it makes you aware of how sometimes the visual can do what 5 pages of dialogue has to accomplish in a book or on stage. But I've been very wary of making sure, okay, no, this wants to be a book and take advantage of that.
Interesting. Yeah, well, Carter did have such a great voice. I mean, it's such a unique voice, and um, yes, it was really fun. Very confessional in a
Yeah,
way, the way he
exactly.
talks. So what was it like writing this? Did you write it during COVID? I know you said that was sort of it was the antidote to that kind of fear to have an escape in this book. But when did you start writing it? Like what was that process like?
I started writing it actually a few years earlier, but I did all the final editing and the final galleys during the lockdown, which was such a blessing. If a pandemic can ever be said to have, an upside, but it was the pandemic actually. I realized kind of made all of us assume the way a writer usually lives, which is alone in your room.
Yep.
But what I loved was being able to escape into this world of a certain glamour, a certain freedom, a certain wild amount of passion. It was just what I needed, so that I'd be working. So, line editing and going through every sentence, and I'd be so happy. And then I'd look up and realize, oh, right, COVID. My mask is sitting on the desk. My surgical gloves are sitting over there. This is a very different time. So it was a great balance for me. And I thought, oh, okay, good. I hope I could share this with readers. That sense of, yep, you're going to have a great time.
And we should also just discuss, I mean, this isn't just Notting Hill. And it's not just the class differences or the fame levels, but this is two men who are in love, and that doesn't often get, central casting in a movie, so to speak, right? But having the whole relationship focus on this romance, tell me about that and deciding to have that be the central feature.
Well, I didn't want to write a coming out story because I think those are very valid. And there are plenty of books about prejudice, about the enormous rejection that gay people could sometimes face. But I thought we need other stories as well, joyous stories. And I know so many openly and very happy gay people that I thought, yeah, that's the world I want to explore. So that I thought, let's have the two guys being gay a complete given. And you think, the royal family has been around forever. There are so many members, and there are some LGBTQ people in there somewhere. So I thought, let's imagine that one of them had come out fearlessly and happily and said, if I'm going to represent my country, they need to know who I really am and take it from there. So I loved trusting the reader that way. it was something, I remember when I was working on In and Out, and the studio was very nervous about it and how would it play in different parts of the country. And they found, no, this is a universal language. People, in fact, are also, I think, very eager for fresh stories, for a story they haven't heard a million times before. So so it was really fun to say, okay, what would that look like? Also, because I think Prince Edgar has an additional layer of responsibility because he has to not only represent the royal family, but he becomes a gay figurehead. And that's not easy, that he's going to be criticized from every place on the political spectrum, that there will be people who feel he's not gay enough, he's not gay in the correct manner, he's too gay. And I thought, okay, that's something that only the first guy has to deal with, or the first woman, that it's, and I think we're starting now with Meghan and Harry, with our first gentleman and married to Kamala, with, there are new roles with Chasten and Pete, that I love watching how the world adjusts and realizes, to a great degree, what were we ever nervous about? These are wonderful couples in love, just like everybody else, sometimes even more so. But I think that's also at the core of the book, is when you're that out there on every level, when you are representing the English people, gay people, everyone, it's great to have a partner. A support system is so important. So that, yeah, I'm gay and I love writing about gay lives in a way that says, nope, this is for everyone.
And poor Edgar has had a lot on his plate in addition to all of that, right? In addition to having to be a figurehead of a nation and a sexuality and everything, but he's gone through a lot of loss himself, and it really has to figure out how to cope with that on a day-to-day basis. Even, his special favorite room in his house, and the old nursery and the memories that he carries with him, and that sort of sense of loss and longing is also unfortunately super timely as well.
Yeah, that was why one thing I so admired about Harry was when he was so open about experiencing depression and about allowing himself to go into therapy. Because you think of what the tragedy he's known since he was a small child, that that's very brave, because the royal family was usually very private about any of those concerns. And I think he realized, no, this is, again, a way I can use my position in the world to help other people, and to remove a certain stigma from issues surrounding mental health. And yeah, I wanted Edgar to be somebody who had a lot of damage. And I think it's also why when we meet his grandmother, Queen Catherine, she seems very forgiving.
Hilarious. Oh my
And
gosh, what a
one of the,
character.
somebody, Carter meets her where he thinks, oh, maybe I'll be presented properly and formally. And of course, no, he runs into her at 2 a.m. in the
Yes.
palace kitchen when he's stealing snacks, and it's just, in his sweats, and it's just everything goes wrong. But I think you eventually realize that Catherine isn't just the toughest cookie on earth. She's so protective of her grandson, and she so wants only the best for him. And she knows that, okay, this is a guy who's experienced way more than his share of tragedy, and she doesn't want that to continue. So that you find there are all sorts of facets to that relationship as well. But yeah, no, I mean, Edgar, I think it's also the difficulty of dealing with personal trauma in a spotlight, with the internet breathing over your shoulder 24/7. That's not something that the rest of us, have to deal with quite as much. So, and I think I wanted to create a character who dealt with it for the most part very well, who understood his privilege, understood his responsibilities, and tried desperately not to let it drive him crazy.
Wow. Well, I'm sure you don't, but I hope you bring these characters back in some way, shape, or form. I know it like tied up with such a neat sort of bow at the end. It was like all so well done. But I would love to see like what it's like next, like what happens next. And like, I don't know, what if they decide to have a child, or like, I don't know. I just feel like you should keep these guys going. All right. Well, I'll just say this. I guess Paul had to go, but anyway, I was recommending to him that um, I think he should keep his characters going, and they are amazing, and the book was fantastic. And I'm sorry we didn't get to hear if he's working on anything new, and I'm sorry he didn't get to add any advice, but I love chatting with him about playing the Palace. And thank you to Paul for joining. And thank you all for listening.